Hello, my name is Rebecca Jackson, and my topic is development of siblings with an alcoholic parent. Look at alcohol in depth. Alcohol is ethanol, especially when considered as an intoxicating agent in fermented and distilled liquors like beer, wine, whiskey, vodka. Absolute. Alcohol is a psychoactive drug. That also means that it's a chemical that changes perceptions and moods. A progressive, potentially fatal disease characterized by an incessant craving for, increased tolerance of, physical dependence upon, and loss of control over drinking alcohol is alcoholism. That's also another name for alcohol use disorder, which is also defined as alcohol use spotted by tolerance, withdrawal, and a need to continue dangerous use. Some common statistics are any drinker has a 5 to 10% risk of becoming an alcoholic. 6 million people abuse alcohol. 9 million Americans are alcohol dependent. ECA studies stated that 13.8% of Americans will have an alcohol-related SUD in their lifetime. Nearly 50% of violent deaths are related to alcohol. A common example are DUIs when a drunken driver is killed. Sorry, go back to the beginning of that video. So that was just a quick video, just kind of summing up what are the common statistics, what alcohol is, how dangerous it can be, especially if it's used improperly. Addiction and disease. Disease is defined as a disorder of structure or function in a human, animal, or plant, especially one that produces specific signs or symptoms or affects a specific location and is not simply a direct result of physical injury. Therefore, that makes addiction a disease because it impacts the function of the brain. And since a disease doesn't have to be a physical injury, this is an injury of the brain, which is more of your mental status, and it clouds our ability to rationally think. So although we know that alcohol is dangerous for us, we still drink it because our body needs it versus us stopping because we know what it's doing to our liver. Alcoholics are prone from both biological and physiological, psychological factors. Their children are then influenced by those factors. So, Elvin Morton Jelinek and Norman Joliffe were the founders of the finding that alcoholism occurred in families. Studies using twin, split siblings, and adoption have been done to help prove a genetic influence between alcohol abuse problems. They believe that the trait to be the inherited factor is tolerance, which is the power of enduring or resisting the action of a drug or a poison, alcohol, anything that could be addictive. Psychological factors for alcoholic parents center around the nature versus nurture, which is a balancing act. We need both of them. And children learn through nature, but the alcoholic parents deprive their children of nurturing. Good examples are they don't read their child a book at night, or they don't cuddle them to sleep, or give them attention when they do something good. Another huge factor is the socioeconomic issue. Alcohol is expensive, and usually if you're an alcoholic, not always, but in most cases, you don't have a very well-rounded job, or don't have a job because you drink a lot of alcohol. And even if you do have a job, you're spending your money on the alcohol, and that causes you to be in a lower social class, or sometimes in a very high social class. You have a lot of richer people who drink alcohol, but it still affects what experience your kid gets in that economic situation. Potentials for a child to be alcoholic. So any drinker already has a 5 to 10% risk of becoming an alcoholic. But if that child had a parent who is an alcoholic, the risk doubles to 20%. If both of the parents are alcoholic, the risk is between 20 to 50%. If you look at fathers, sons, and brothers, they have 50% risks, which alcoholism is higher in men than women anyways. Risk for male and female twins or fraternal twins is 28%, and identical twins is 54%. If the father is severely alcoholic and has a criminal history, the son's risk is 90%, which is rather high. So when we think about a child, Aristotle once said that children are like clean slates, and we see what we draw on them. So when we look into child development, a child is most observant from birth to ages 12 to 13, but the biggest impact of lack in nurturing occurs from birth to 5 years old. That is when they are most observant, most impressionable, all the works. That greatly impacts the psychological development, mostly depriving them of that essential trust of their environment. A good example is when a child's role model is dependent on alcohol, it draws a dependent personality from that child. So if a parent is helpless, it encourages that child to be equally helpless, which therefore means that the child is even more dependent, because if you can't do anything for yourself, you rely on others to do things for you, which is very much so of a personality of an alcoholic. These children are at risk of increased numbers of depression, anxiety, self-consciousness issues, embarrassments, which lead to other things. There's a bunch of different psychiatric illnesses that can happen, PTSD. Since these psychiatric services are not readily available, a lot of individuals in these homes end up resorting to self-medicate themselves with the alcohol and drugs that their parents are therefore using. So in this photo here, it just shows you a non-animated version of a child at the end of a bottle, and the parents holding the bottle above their child. It just shows you, kind of that accurate description of what it's like to be that child and know that your parents favor the alcohol, even if when they're sober they say they love you more. And it's not necessarily they don't love you more, it's just that addiction is so strong that it's hard to, once you're drinking, it's hard to rationalize, that's my child, not alcohol. So that's just a non-animate vision. Now I'm going to show you a video that just kind of just shows it a little bit better. Which, I got to start over again, I'm sorry. Now, when we look closer, attitude is the little thing that makes a big difference. So the main point of my presentation is, why is one sibling an alcoholic and not the other? A lot of psychologists and doctors have determined a trait set of temperament, personality, distress tolerance, flexibility, adaptability, comorbidity, with other mental health issues. They're all factors that create who we are as individual people. So two siblings, although with the same parents, are individual people. And so what studies have shown, from the words of Dr. Ahmed from Bloomington, or Twin City Bloomington Health, he says that resilience is the key factor, and this is also an inherited factor, or inherited trait. Psychologists have identified that resilience is built by a positive attitude, optimism, the ability to regulate emotions, and the ability to see failure as a form of helpful feedback. And so when you think of this, a lot of those things are characters of someone who's independent. You're able to help take care of yourself, and so you're resilient to what you see in front of you. You're not going to get hurt or as easily. Okay, a good sport example. Someone's kicking a ball, someone might get hit with the ball, and they don't bruise as easily as you might bruise because they have a greater resilience to that ball hitting them. A little bit more muscle endurance, I don't know, something like that. And so that's the same idea for resilience towards your parents being an alcoholic. You have more inner strength to be like, hey, I notice this isn't a good situation. I don't want to do this situation. And so I'm going to get myself out of this situation versus someone who has the opposite effect. So for a good example would be, in my family, my grandpa was an alcoholic, and so he had 5 kids, and 3 of the 5 of them, all the men coincidentally, were all alcoholics, but my 2 aunts were not. They couldn't stand the idea of drinking, and in fact they don't drink now. And so a lot of that is just based on their emotional tolerance and resistance to what they grew up around. And so that is ultimately the difference between a sibling developing alcoholism and a sibling and the other sibling not. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you have a great day.